Hey everybody, so today we are going to reflect on my reading year for 2024. Basically, what I want to do, I didn't read a ton this year, so it was kind of useless for me to do that end of the year tag because we would have too many repeats. I didn't read that many new to me 5 stars because I did a lot of rereading. So instead, I'm gonna just do my own thing. So this is gonna be, I read this year 17 completed books. There's a couple that I'm still in the middle of that is gonna have to just go into 2025 if I finish them. I did DNF 1. Just so we understand where we're at here, I'm going to tell you what my rereads were. So if I'm rereading a book, I loved it, so there we go. I reread Bunny, the Area X original trilogy by Jeff Vandermeer, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and The Haunting of Hill House, which, yeah, that was what I did my master's thesis on. So I didn't just read it, I absorbed it into my soul and wrote 30 pages of notes about it. So I wish I was exaggerating. But yeah, that's what I did with Hill House. So I did 6 rereads of some favorites. According to Goodreads, my top genres, which I don't disagree with this is what I read the most, were science fiction, horror, and fantasy. I'm gonna put up on the screen here my personal stats. What I like to do, I have my own little reading, like literally Microsoft Word document that I started when I was 14 to keep track of my reading. Before I was ever on Goodreads, I didn't join Goodreads till I was like 16 or 17 years old. So as you can see, I do read a kind of a variety of genres, and I do track them by decade as well. I have stats from like 2009 to 2019 in a clump, and I'm collecting stats from 2020 to 2029 as well. That'll be a fun thing to review down the road if I'm still here. This was a slower reading year for me compared to the past few years. Ever since I got my Kindle, getting a Kindle has really allowed me to embrace my truth as a mood reader, because what I tend to do for my Kindle is I tend to get library books on there. And so that's how I try out a lot of different things. And if I'm like, oh, I'm in the mood for something that's not on my shelf right now, just do that. So it's allowed me to like read more. And I've been reading about 30-ish or so books every year for the past... for the past few years. Whew, that was a strong sneeze. This year I read less for a variety of reasons. First of all, it took a long time to get through that big reread of Hill House, write the master's thesis. And then right before I did that, I was in this romantic poetry class, and we didn't often read entire books of romantic poetry. It was just like almost like a survey course in a way. So it was like lots of romantic poetry, but like across different books and different authors. I also almost lost my mind during that class for a whole variety of reasons. Yay. In general, I never read as much as like some of the other booktubers out there, just because I know how to speed read. I've had to do that at certain points in my life. I simply do not prefer it. I just like a slower reading experience. It's just the way that I am. I don't think that there's wrong with anything either way. I do not want to open that can of worms. They're like, are those people that read 300 books a year even reading? Yeah, they are. They've hacked it. I also don't do audiobooks, which is another thing that allows a lot of people to read quicker, which is fantastic. I just don't, I'm so picky about narrators that I don't bother. So that's kind of my thing with that. I totally see it as valid reading because your brain is still doing a lot of the same things when you're reading on a page anyway. Not that it should be about brain power in the first place, because it's a hobby. Another thing from the past few years that has indicated that because I'm reading more, I was inherently writing less. And I don't think that that's always going to be the case for everybody. Like, one of the biggest reading years of my life, I wrote probably the most of my life. So like, however, oftentimes for me, if I'm reading more, I'm writing less, right? Because it's the same chunk of time that I'm dedicating usually to both hobbies. I've been trying really hard this year to get back into it. I've made videos about struggling with burnout, and especially like what's crazy too is now that, I don't know, with time and seeing patterns in myself, it really seems like part of what I consider burnout was a lot of it comes back to my PCOS and how crappy it really makes me feel. And yeah, so either way, one thing I've noticed this year as I've gotten back into writing is that as soon as I start to dip my toes, I get sucked back in like really intensely for a little bit. I just think I need to get sucked back in at some point early this year and just be consistent with it, because the more I do it, the harder it is for me to break away from it. That's what I think my priority will be in terms of writing. And if that means I read less, then it means I read less. I don't really care. Either way, I'm going to have plenty of content for this channel. I saw the most growth this year on this channel because I started being a little more consistent with uploading once my master's was done. And right now, I'm comfy with this being reading and writing material. Yeah, right now I'm cool with that. So obviously we're going to see as we go what the channel's going to shape and become. But I find that there's a lot of people that would be interested in both content at the same time. So that's what I'm going to do. So let's get into some more of like my like stats for the year and some of the bookish superlatives, if you will. Let's start with the ick. So one of the biggest disappointments of the year was the Exhibition of Persephone Q by Jesse Jizuka Stevenson. I can't remember. I'll put it up there. This one was a contemporary. I don't usually do contemporary, but for some reason I just really felt like I was gonna vibe with this one based off of the kind of synopsis. But then I didn't. It was a very tiny book with too much going on. Like, not in a good way. Like, too many themes, too many approaches. And I just wish that maybe she only picked like a few of those things and fleshed them out a bit more. But yeah, it's about this girl who, she has like so much stuff going on. She's pregnant, but she's not telling her husband, and like more time keeps going on and she's not telling that. And it's post 9/11 in New York City. There's a guy that she dated in the past who has done this like art photography gallery using her images without her consent. And there's that. And there was just so much, and it's just such a small book. Good writing style. I think that I want this author to write poetry. I know I've said that before in the channel. I want her to write poetry because I think it would slap, because she does have some great turns of phrases. The other one, my most recent disappointed, this was the only book I DNF'd this year. That was Into the Drowning Deep by Merritt Grant. It's supposed to be about killer mermaids. I was like 120 some pages in, and I really felt like I should have felt a little more at that point. It was just hard for me to care about the characters because there was too many, and we were telling and not showing. So there was too much of that. Wasn't really crazy about the dialogue. In general, though, the more I think on it, do I really care about killer mermaids? No. I would have cared about it if the atmosphere was right, and it just... I was getting into a reading slump reading it, and I know myself by now. I know when it's time to put something down, so I put it down. So yeah, those were like, I don't want to say my worst books. They just disappointed me. They weren't what I wanted. So yeah, that's those. So now, let's get into my most favorite books of the year. So clocking in at number 4. This one was surprising to me. Troublemaker by Leah Remini. Yeah. I didn't even really watch this actress's show, The King of Queens, that much or anything. But my dad was interested in this book, and that's what kind of put it on my radar. And so I read it, and it's about her experiences being a Hollywood Scientologist and how she ended up escaping it. And it was like super engaging because she's really funny. And so even when she's talking about really serious topics, she's got this like lightness about it, and like she's not afraid to crack a joke. And I feel like I learned a lot because I didn't really know a lot about Scientology. I just knew some of the basic things. It gets a little bit meta, so it was like kind of hard for me to grasp. But if you didn't know, basically like the way that church is structured is that you have to pay like a lot of money over time, because you pay money to do these like classes to like go up the bridge of understanding or something. And then there was like child labor stuff in there, and she's makes some different claims about the people at the top, and she definitely had a lot of kind of scathing words about their policy of, you know, basically shunning people that aren't in the church, which they deny. Obviously, all of this stuff is alleged, and it's stuff that's in her book. So like, hopefully I don't get sued. But yeah, that's what's in the book. I thought it was very interesting. I learned a lot. It was very funny. Great job. So then my next favorite, number 3. Yeah, because I have a top 4 of the year. My number 3 would have to be Absolution by Jeff Vandermeer. This was my most anticipated book of the year. It is a sequel to his original Area X trilogy, which has Annihilation as the starter. It was really good. Is it my favorite of the series? No, it's also not my least favorite. Very, very odd stuff going on. It gives us some more context. It's like a prequel to the original like trilogy, and you don't get perfect answers because it's Jeff Vandermeer, but you definitely get some, and kind of a stronger understanding of how Area X works, how it bends time, and well, not how it bends time, but like how time works there, and things like that. If you're not familiar, it's about this area. Obviously, it's called Area X. It's about this area that is like this pristine wilderness, and people that go in to investigate, they either don't come back or they don't come back the same. And it's very well done. Environmental horror. Loved it. Number 2 has to be Death's End by Cixin Liu. This one is a clunker. It's this epic conclusion to his 3 Body Problem books trilogy. So, last book of the series, definitely very big brain. It's very sci-fi heavy. Like the science fiction concepts really help drive the story. I thought it was a great conclusion. I think it's a very interesting analysis about the dark force theory that's like kind of explored in the previous book. You follow a different character and how she makes her impact on handling the Trisolaris crisis, so first contact with aliens. And it kind of shows the impacts not only between Earth and that planet and those people, but like, that species, but also like across the universe. So it gets very, very big picture. It gets very, very big brained. I definitely couldn't read it when I wasn't feeling it. Like all brain cells have to be on and engaged to get through it, but it's so worth it. I really respect how smart this author is, and like, yeah, it's just, there's nothing else quite like it. It's so intriguing. But there's still like some character depth. Not so much in the first one, but like in the second one and then Death's End. A lot more character depth, I would say, and a lot more, I almost want to say humanistic, in my opinion. And then at number 1 for the year, we have Vita Nostra. I love this book. This is by Marina and Sergei Diachenko. I talked about this one as well as Absolution in my last reading vlog. Basically, it's about this girl who, this guy kind of she encounters in her life just starts to have her do these really strange tasks, like running around in like rain or snow and jogging until she like can find a good spot, and then she'll like pee in the woods or something. It's so random at first, but then she ends up, it becomes all a part of this play to get her into this Institute of Special Technologies. It is almost like a magic system that is a mixture of like fantasy, philosophy, sci-fi, and it's very engaging because it's so foreboding. Whenever you're reading, as she enters the Institute, you know that she is on a path to be different in ways that she probably never would have wanted. She doesn't want. So like you're torn the whole time because you want her to escape, but you also want to know what this all means. And the ending is like, I feel like some books with really cool concepts, they hit you with that Scooby-Doo kind of ending, like, oh, it was this very simple explanation the entire time. They don't do that. It's very a very thoughtful book. I loved everything about it. I loved the concepts. The character work was pretty solid. I loved the kind of dreary atmosphere. The writing was really nice too. But yeah, this was definitely my favorite. I loved how weird and unique this was. I definitely recommend it. It's technically like a dark academic type thing, which normally I'm not one of those girlies that are like, oh my gosh, dark academia. This one was really good. I really, really got the hype behind this. I think that those fantastical elements are really what reeled me in. Okay, so those are my favorites. So now, let's look ahead into 2025. So I already told you about my plans for the channel, so a mixture between reading content and writing content. I do have some really anticipated releases for next year. I'm really bad about reading new releases on time, so I might not read them in 2025, maybe later. The first one that I'm most excited about is The Influencers by Anna Marie Meckelmore. So I met Anna Marie at a book signing before, and I've read a few of their books. My favorite one is When the Moon Was Ours. But like, I haven't read one that I loved quite as much of that one yet. I still need to read more of their catalog. The Influencers is their adult debut. They usually write YA. And it's about like this family that like of influencers, like you know how like you have like the mommy influencers and they're filming their kids without their consent, stuff like that. It's a group of like the kids of the family that have grown up, like the siblings, and then a crime has happened or something. Yeah, it looks really cool. I'm very excited about it because I'm very interested. I tend to be interested in anything this author writes because they tend to handle things very beautifully with their magical realism. This one feels a lot more realistic, so it's going to be kind of a turn for them. But also, this concept of parents filming their friggin' kids and their whole life and putting it on the internet, it just freaks me out so bad. And I think that there's a lot to be said about those types of influencers out there. And I really think that Anna Marie McLemore will do an amazing job with it. So that's my most anticipated one. Sylvia Moreno Garcia has one that's going to come out that has to do with witches. I've only read Mexican Gothic so far, and it's amazing. I love it. I need to read more of their work this year. But I am excited for that one. We do have Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins coming out, the Haymitch book. And like, here's the thing, I love the Hunger Games. It has a very special place in my heart. Teenage me was obsessed. But like, I don't know how much I need to go back there. It's just like a really morbid storyline. So I might read that one, I might not. I definitely didn't read Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes because frankly, nobody asked for that. I never wanted a President Snow story. And frankly, all the things I heard about it, it doesn't sound like it was that good. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Nobody threw anything at me. But I don't think it makes sense to pin down everything that President Snow disliked about Katniss on an ex-girlfriend, right? Like, that just seems a little dumb to me. Sorry. So then, there's a couple authors that are really popular that I've not read anything by, and they have books coming out next year that, like, for the first time, the synopsis grabs me. So Joe Abercrombie, like, my understanding is they're doing, like, more of a grimdark type thing, which isn't really my cup of tea, but The Devils, that book comes out next year. And basically, the reason why I'm interested in this one is because it's got that, like, really dark religious setting, which I've been kind of looking for since watching Midnight Mass. So I think that that could speak to me. And then the other one, I'm going to blow your minds. I've never read anything by V.E. Schwab, or Victoria Schwab for that matter, because I know they write under a couple names. I've never read anything by V.E. Schwab. Bury Our Bones in the Midnight... Wait, what? Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. That's coming out. I'm just going to, like, post that description for you. Because it's a beautiful freaking description. So I think that this might be the year, or at least it might be the year that books by Joe Abercrombie and V.E. Schwab are released that I actually want to read those. And maybe that'll help me get into those authors. I don't know. We're going to find out. So that's like the highlights of the year. I want to know what your favorite books were this year. I want to know what you were disappointed by this year. I want to know what you would want from this channel going forward, especially because I want to be more consistent this year. I don't have the master's thesis. I want to be more consistent with YouTube and writing, and obviously, hopefully, reading as much as I can along the way. But yeah, thank you for being here and for making 2024 weirdly successful. It will always mean the world to me that how much love I got on my video about burnout. That is my most viewed video. And one thing that's also kind of important about it that might seem silly, I always kind of had this idea in my head, like filming became really daunting for me because like, oh, I need to look done up and whatever. I shot that video, no makeup, just vibes, didn't really script it that well, and it did the best out of anything. So I feel like just getting over that psychological barrier has made me feel like I can do this, and I can do it however I want, and I can be authentic to me, and somebody's going to respond well. All right, everybody. So I will see you throughout this year. Bye.